Our story kicks off with the main character wandering down a dirt path that feels like it goes on forever. No matter which way he turns, there is absolutely nothing but endless fields of tall grass. A month prior, back in the royal capital, he was suddenly shoved into a carriage and sent on a massive journey with zero explanation about where he was actually going. Once they finally reach their stop, an escort tells him that this empty region is the perfect place for an orphan looking to build a future. He is then handed a territorial map, plus a formal list of assets gifted directly by the king. This vast, open wasteland is known as the Nezros Plains, and starting today, our protagonist will officially take on the name Diaz Nezros. He ended up receiving this massive land as a reward for his incredible achievements during the war, making him the absolute lord responsible for the entire territory. He does not fully understand why this is happening to him, but he has heard that a feudal lord is expected to live on his land, protect his subjects, and collect taxes to send back to the kingdom. When he spots a nearby river, he drinks from it without a moment of hesitation. Since his time fighting in the brutal war, he had grown used to drinking muddy, murky water just to survive. However, the surrounding area has absolutely nothing. There is not even a single tree in sight. As night falls, he realizes he cannot stay out there any longer because if things continue this way, he will eventually die of exposure. He considers heading to a nearby village in hopes of finding some kind of useful work. The following morning, he is suddenly awakened by a sharp kick as a mysterious girl asks exactly who he is. He introduces himself as Diaz and calmly explains that he was simply sleeping there. He tells her that he has nowhere else to go. She aggressively asks if he is an idiot, and the man replies that maybe he is, considering he reached his current age without ever receiving any formal education. She then asks why he is even there, and Diaz explains that he was strictly sent to these lands by the kingdom. He says he only wants to protect his father's and mother's legacy, be useful to other people, and defend the weak, which is his ultimate life's goal. The girl wonders why he is not lying, and Diaz simply answers that he sees absolutely no reason to do so. He then asks why she is so upset when he has done nothing wrong. Diaz realizes she is one of the local residents and assumes she must be working for someone out here. Even so, he declares that no matter who the enemy may be, he will always protect others. Suddenly, his horn begins to glow, and she asks why it is shining so brightly. She immediately grabs Diaz by the arm and starts running, saying she needs to take him to the village right away. She decides to introduce him directly to her leader. An older woman asks why she brought a complete stranger, especially one whose horn is glowing with such an intense blue light for no apparent reason. The girl explains that his entire body shone blue, and when she asked whether he was an ally, the light became even brighter. The old woman then asks who the man is. Diaz introduces himself by saying that he is their ally, since he claims to be Aruna's ally. The old woman asks if he will also be hers. Diaz answers yes, explaining that he has been appointed the feudal lord of these lands, sent by the king himself to rule the territory. At that exact moment, Aruna points a deadly arrow directly at his head, but the old woman tells her to wait and let him finish speaking before doing anything drastic. She wants to better understand this strange story about being sent by the king. Diaz then begins telling his tragic backstory. He says that while his parents were still alive, he grew up without understanding much about the outside world. His mother always told him to do work that would help other people, while his father encouraged him to become someone who protected the weak. That was the heavy legacy they left behind. When he was just 10 years old, a terrible epidemic claimed both of his parents' lives. Afterward, he joined other orphans who had suffered the exact same loss and survived by cleaning the city and hunting weak monsters in exchange for small rewards. He continued following his parents' teachings and tried to live in a way that would never disappoint them. When he turned 15, the war began, and before long, enemy soldiers had already reached the neighboring village. To protect his precious friends, he volunteered to become a soldier on the front lines. At the time, he had no idea he possessed an exceptional talent for warfare, and afterward, he accomplished many remarkable feats on the battlefield. 20 years passed, and the war finally came to an end. As a grand reward, the king granted him this vast territory. The old woman realizes that he truly is a feudal lord who only wants to protect his allies. She then asks what he would do if they were not his subjects. Would he still help them? Diaz replies that in that case, they would simply be neighbors living on the same plane, and if they ever had any problems, he would help them without thinking twice. His horn glows a bright blue once again. Diaz then asks why she has been asking him so many suspicious questions. The old woman replies that he still does not understand the reality of the situation. They are not allies of the kingdom, but its sworn enemies. They have been fighting against the kingdom for many years. Even so, she does not consider Diaz as an enemy. He is a rare blue, and perhaps because of that, they can live together peacefully. She asks him to raise his head and listen carefully. She then introduces herself as Maul, the leader of the Oni tribe. For a very long time, they have been fighting the kingdom over control of this specific plain. 50 years ago, they lost a major war and were driven out of the area entirely. Diaz asks why they are still living there if they were expelled. The old woman explains that their horns store mana and allow them to use many kinds of powerful magic. This includes concealment magic, which completely hides the entire village and erases its presence from the world. Diaz finally understands why he had not seen the village the previous day. He asks if she is really sure about revealing all of these secrets to someone who came directly from the kingdom. The old woman replies that if he were not blue, she never would have told him anything. She explains that whenever someone poses a threat or harbors hostility, the horn's color turns red. If the person is completely harmless, it becomes white. But blue represents those who will bring happiness and blessings to the tribe. If someone lies, the color becomes cloudy and starts shifting toward red. The old woman says she has never met anyone so perfectly honest before, to the point that it actually feels strange. The young man asks if that was supposed to be a compliment. Her answer is simple. She has been complimenting him this whole time, and she even intends to guide him into becoming a good lord. However, he stubbornly refuses to become her subordinate. Even so, she offers him a house away from the village, along with food and livestock to raise. In return, he must keep the village's existence an absolute secret, never revealing it even to the king himself. They hold no hostility toward him as long as he does not interfere in their ongoing conflict with the kingdom. He is completely free to live on the plains. They even offer Aruna's help for a while so she can guide him as he adapts to life in this harsh area. Aruna immediately complains that he is responsible for creating this annoying situation and therefore has to deal with its consequences until the very end. He accepts her help without arguing. The conversation quickly shifts. The place and its structure are now treated as if they are almost complete, as though construction is already well underway. The girl explains that when a crisis strikes, even advanced concealment magic cannot solve everything. The ultimate solution is to dismantle everything and escape while carrying the house itself. This is a special system called Udo, whose name he only now learns. They exchange polite words of gratitude. Soon afterward, they explain that food supplies and the mere will arrive later. The mere are domesticated livestock raised specifically for production and income. If they are properly cared for and bred, they can provide long-term financial stability for the Lord. He confidently says he will learn how to take care of them. Then, someone suggests increasing the population of good citizens as well. But the idea is immediately rejected due to their current desperate situation. There is not even enough food for the people already living there. Bringing in more people would only lead to mass starvation, so the idea is considered far too naive. As compensation, they hand him a special powder made from cat vine. Once scattered around the area, it forcefully attracts wild animals. The strategy is simple. Hunt them down, make use of the meat and hides, and trade them for resources or even parts needed for the Udo system. The young man accepts the dangerous task without hesitation. He says he is already good at hunting and does not need to overthink it. He heads straight to the designated area and waits for the violent beasts to appear. As soon as the attack begins, he relies entirely on raw instinct and brute strength. There is no refined technique here, only overwhelming physical force. He manages to brutally kill many creatures, but about half of them manage to escape his grasp. Satisfied with the results, he ends the hunt right there. Later on, they confirmed the existence of a valuable material known as black silver. He had purchased a large quantity of it, but cannot carry everything by himself. The pressing problem of transporting it immediately becomes the next major topic of discussion. Someone reacts in pure shock upon learning that he had casually bought around 30 or 40 pieces of it. Their entire opinion of him changes instantly. His actions and massive accomplishments lead them to describe him as incredibly manly in a highly exaggerated way. Afterward, they discuss his hunting routine. The previous expedition was not enough, and they still need far more resources to build infrastructure, such as a well and access to the river. Since they absolutely cannot afford to hire professional craftsmen, hunting once again becomes the obvious solution. They consider targeting the exact same type of creature again, but that would create serious problems with the villagers. Instead, they decide to hunt dangerous monsters, even though they are less useful as a direct food source. Their true value lies in materials such as horns, claws, and magic stones, all of which can be sold for an extremely good price. Diaz already has extensive experience hunting monsters, so they decide to make full use of his combat skills. She confirms that there are only a few monsters in the region, but they can definitely still be found. The plan is for Aruna to accompany him to speed things up. Once everything is fully ready, he sets off on the next hunt. Before long, he spots a massive, intimidating target, and the mission rapidly moves toward an inevitable confrontation. Diaz decides to advance completely alone at first and tells Aruna to stay safely behind. However, she quickly reminds him that she can use concealment magic to protect herself. Even so, the protagonist sees the creature as nothing more than an ordinary giant turtle and charges directly at it without a hint of hesitation. The moment he lands his first heavy strike, however, his weapon cracks, revealing just how incredibly tough the monster's shell really is. Refusing to give up, he aims his next strike directly for the creature's head. However, the smart turtle immediately pulls its head back safely inside its shell, protecting its weakest point from damage. Watching everything unfold from a distance, Aruna screams for Diaz to retreat immediately and run away while he still has the chance. Even after hearing her desperate warning, the protagonist completely ignores it. He climbs right back onto the creature's massive shell and continues attacking it without stopping. After landing several consecutive, heavy blows, his axe suffers even more severe damage, and the cracks spread much further. Even so, Diaz remains completely unconcerned, as he is able to magically repair the weapon instantly. Witnessing this impossible ability leaves Aruna utterly amazed. Diaz then explains that he obtained this magical axe after defeating a legendary warrior known as the Shogun from a neighboring country. Besides resembling a fierce lion, the weapon also possesses the unique ability to repair minor damage whenever necessary without wasting any time in battle. He continues repeatedly striking the enormous monster until physical exhaustion gradually begins to catch up with him. When he finally glances back toward Aruna, he notices that she is actively being affected by the toxic miasma released by the creature. Deeply worried about her condition and determined to take her home safely, Diaz decides to end this battle once and for all. Gathering his remaining strength, he delivers one devastating final blow. This time, his heavy attack finally shatters the giant turtle's shell into pieces. At that exact moment, the monster's true, terrifying identity is revealed. A massive dragon hidden inside the shell suddenly emerges and unleashes an enormous fireball. Even so, Diaz reacts instantly and stops the deadly attack by cleanly slicing right through the creature's neck. Soon afterward, he continues dodging the monster's relentless, fiery attacks. But suddenly, one of the fireballs sharply changes course and heads straight toward Aruna, making him realize that she has become the dragon's true target. Without a second thought, Diaz immediately leaps in to protect her from the blast. Remembering the solemn promise he made to keep her safe, he gathers every last bit of strength he has left and fiercely defeats the monster once and for all. As soon as the gigantic creature is finally defeated, Aruna runs toward Diaz with heavy tears filling her eyes. Overwhelmed with emotion, she embraces him tightly, and while remaining safely in his arms, she loudly declares that she is going to marry him.